Hey, everybody, and welcome to episode 13 of the Mosaic Podcast. Today, I am lucky enough to have Trent Murray as a guest. And this is really strange because I feel like this guy is like my friend, but we've never even really met. We had a long conversation. He was my first podcast that I ever did, and I think I spoke for like 7 days on his show. And he was kind enough to just let me speak on and on. But from that moment on, I felt like he was my brother. And this is some of the wonders of what happens in a world where we're connected through technology. Because he's in Malaysia. It's actually Tuesday morning, 8 a.m. there. I'm in San Diego. It's Monday evening, 5 p.m. here. We've never actually had the chance to hug each other and handshake each other and look each other straight, person to person in the eye. But we have the opportunity to speak with each other and get knowledge. And I can tell you, you're in for a treat right now, because here's a man who has been, let me just read you a little bit about who he is. He's the senior vice president of a hotel and resort spa management company called Mandara Spa and Steiner Spa Consulting. Prior to being there, he spent 14 years in the hotel industry, most recently with Six Senses Hotel and Resorts and Como Hotel and Resorts, where he was the opening general manager of Ubud, Bali. Did I say that right?
Close enough.
Okay, close enough. He has worked in Australia, the United States, Thailand, the Maldives, and Indonesia. And after more than 25 years in the hotel and spa world, doing business in over 30 countries, Trent has developed a unique perspective on the business of spas. He speaks a lot about innovation, and what I want to do in our conversation today is have him use the spa industry as, of course, the stone from which he knows what he's doing from, but to sort of expand that out for those of us not in the spa industry that are listening to this. So it's with tremendous honor and respect and gratitude to you, Trent, and I welcome you onto the Mosaic Podcast. Thank you for being here, and welcome.
Danny, great to be here, although I have to tell you I'm going to have to go because you never told me this was going to be number 13. That surely can't be good.
Oh, I see, because in hotels, you don't have a 13th floor, right?
Well, funnily enough, in this part of the world, you don't have a 14th floor. 4 is the unlucky number in Chinese. So In a lot of our buildings here, we don't have a number 4. But 13 generally is not considered a great number in most places. So I'll have to come back tomorrow.
Okay. So you already see the type of guy he is, okay? Because 13 to me happens to be one of the luckiest numbers I've ever had. All good things happen to me on 13. So, but then again, even with 13, 1 and 3 equals 4, which is a number that doesn't even work there. So we're screwed both ways. So
correct.
Knowing that we're already sort of have no chance of making this a good podcast, let's go in, all right?
With you.
Before you got involved in all that you're doing now, I just want to go backstory a little bit. When you were a kid growing up, first of all, where did you grow up?
I was born in country Victoria, which is a state within Australia, and I was born in a place called Shepparton, which was the fruit growing capital of the universe, at least as far as we were concerned. And my dad was a bank manager. He was a country bank manager, essentially. We traveled around a lot as kids. And so most of our early life was spent in country areas. He was the bank manager in a small country town, essentially.
Wow. But you grew up traveling, which sort of reflects a lot of the way you've lived your life now. That was normal for you, would you say?
Yeah, it's interesting. You know, I think at one point I'd counted, I had 13 different schools and I was only 14 years old.
Wow.
And I hadn't been kicked out of any of them, just to clarify that. So, yeah, I mean, I guess I have traveled around a lot, and there's a whole bunch of interesting dynamics that go along with that. As it turned out, I got into the hotel business and, subsequently the hotel spa business. And most of my job now is indeed traveling. But, it's interesting. There's 3 boys in the family, and one of them doesn't even have a passport. The other one has gone to the opposite ends of the earth as well. And then there's me in the middle who's who again is traveling all over the place.
Wow. And so when you look back on your childhood, when you were growing up, what is it you sat down and said, oh gosh, I hope I'm this when I grow up? What did you want to be?
I guess like every young fellow, I wanted to be everything. I wanted to be a policeman, a fireman. I wanted to be a copper for a long time. I thought I was going to be a policeman. And because look, when you're sort of 16 in Australia, that's when you can, at least in those days, you could go off and do an apprenticeship. You could go and learn to do a trade, to be a mechanic or a carpenter or these kind of skill sets. But otherwise, you couldn't kind of leave school. You had to finish year 12, which was the end of high school. So when you're 18, essentially. And, I hated school. Up until 16, I just didn't like school at all. Loved the sport and loved everything else, hated school. And so I thought, well, how can I get out? Because I can't have a trade because I don't have any skills with my hands and I'm really bad at woodwork and all those subjects. So I figured I'll have to stick it out till high school. And then I thought, I don't want to go to university. So how can I get out and get a job? I could be a policeman, but I couldn't actually be a policeman till I was, I think, 18 and a half. And because my birthday was late in the year, that meant I had to basically wait a whole nother 11 months after I finished high school to even be able to apply to the police force. Wow. And then I thought, what am I going to do in the next 12 months? I'll go to university and do something. And what I ended up doing was studying the first Bachelor of Business degree in Australia in the field of tourism. So it wasn't a hotel degree specifically, it was a travel and tourism degree. And that's where I started. I still had a bit of an ear onto the police force, but turned out my eyes weren't very good, and so I couldn't have got in anyway. So
wow. And so making that decision to go into tourism, how did that happen for you? Because I know you had to take something, but why tourism? Why not business? Why not?
It's interesting. I mean, hotels was out there. I didn't particularly think I wanted to do hotels, which is ironic because that's where I ended up. Tourism to me sounded interesting. I think my one passion, I guess, and this is something that I think you and I may have spoken about before, the whole idea of, I don't actually know what I'm passionate about. People say, find your passion and then you'll never work a day in your life.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what my passion is. And I think part of that problem is I've come across people who are truly passionate about what they do. And I compare my level of passion to their level of passion and say, I'm not as passionate as that guy. So I'm really not passionate about that thing. So I have to find something else. But I think the one thing that I was fascinated with as a kid was always the underwater world. I got my diving ticket at 16. I watched every National Geographic underwater episode, every Jacques Cousteau episode. And I think actually at 16, I decided I wanted to be a diver for a profession. But then as I started to explore it, I realized, the only way to get a job out of diving, unless you're Jacques Cousteau,
right,
is to either be a dive operator, run a dive business, which I thought just seemed like a drag because it'll become, annoying.
Yeah.
Or being an underwater fixer of stuff. So being an underwater engineer, being the guy that clears mines in the army or fixes bridges and that kind of stuff, which is certainly not really what I used to watch on Jacques Cousteau.
Right.
So I actually did a work experience time at the Navy in Victoria for a couple of weeks when I was 16, and I realized I really wasn't going to be a Navy guy. And so why tourism? I guess it was something down to that kind of level. It was kind of something I could see it related. And I think when I started, I thought my dream job would be to get a job running SeaWorld.
Wow.
Running something that is tourism related, educating people maybe, but also in the water world, in the world of underwater stuff. That was kind of what I thought I'd end up doing once I got into the tourism degree.
Wow. And so if you were to look back at your life then and see yourself now, what would be the percentage of chance that you would say you would be doing what you're doing now then?
Probably about 3.4% would be my guess.
So
never in a million years.
And so one of the things that I love about this show and about talking to people is how often that's the response, because we go through different areas of our life and we think this is where we're going to be, or we think this is who we are, but who we are in the moment is never who we are. It's just who we are in that moment.
Mm-hmm.
And so how did the hotel industry open up for you? How did you go from running SeaWorld or a department of SeaWorld to being
No, I was running the whole thing.
Running the whole thing. Okay. Okay. So running the SeaWorld.
This is my story.
I got it. But it's interesting, even as you're speaking, you've always had a sense of discovery. You were traveled around with your dad, going to lots of different places, different schools. I'm sure there are a lot of things in that were difficult as a kid, because kids want to have the same friends, grow up with the same, right?
Yep.
And then this world didn't seem, going to the underneath the sea is a whole nother level of discovery.
Yep.
That is really interesting. So how did that land then for you to be? Was there a connection that happened? Was there a person that you met? Was there somebody who influenced you to say, we got to get you into the hotel industry?
Like most moves that I think we make as particularly younger people, it was happenstance, if nothing else. I mean, I was in my second year, I think, of university in this tourism degree. A guy that was in my classes was part of the Rotary network. You're familiar with Rotary?
Sure. Yep.
His parents were part of Rotary. He wanted to do an exchange, a student exchange with Rotary. He wanted to go to Canada. He went to our university and they said, no, we don't have anything in Canada. We're trying to set something up in Virginia. Would you be interested in that? And before you know it, there was an exchange program organized with Virginia Tech, who had a really good hospitality school. I was talking to him literally at lunchtime one day, and I said, what are you doing next semester? He said, I'm going to America. Do you want to come? Because they had two kids over there that wanted to come to Australia. We had they needed two from our school that wanted to go over there. We just do a straight swap, essentially. And so within probably about 4 weeks of that conversation, wow, I was on a plane to the States with him and did a semester over there. And that was leading into my third year of university, in which we had to do an industrial placement year, essentially a work experience year. So it was 2 years of school, 1 year out in the field and 1 year back to finish the degree. Now, at that time, the airline strike had hit. This was 1990, just to show my age. At that time, the airline strike had hit Australia and tourism had basically tumbled. And as a result of that, people in my school year weren't getting jobs. And so I reached out to my university and said, listen, I'm in America now. Can I try and get a job for next year in America instead? Which wow, I previously asked and they said no. But now, of course, nobody's getting jobs. They said, okay. And so I thought, well, what sort of jobs could I get? Hotels seemed like an obvious choice. And the hardest part about that was this was kind of pre-email, so you had to actually fill in applications and write letters and stuff. And my biggest concern was actually trying to find out what I was asking for, because we called it industrial placement. When I called an American hotel company and said, do you do industrial placement? They said, huh?
Right.
And after about 6 or 7 calls to different hotel companies, I worked out I needed an internship.
Yes.
And once we got over that hurdle, then it was pretty simple. I mean, I was a young Aussie guy. This was Crocodile Dundee at the height of the movie cinemas. I had that interesting voice in America. I had a tourism interest. I pretty much got to choose where I wanted to go and what I wanted to do. And so as a result, I ended up at the Hyatt Regency on Hilton Head in South Carolina. And they said, do you want to work in front office? Do you want to work in housekeeping? Do you want to work in the spa, recreation? Oh, recreation, that sounds fun. Because it wasn't about actually learning anything, of course. It was about having fun.
Right.
And so, again, another little bit of an ironic twist, I ended up working as the core of my internship in the Hyatt Spa. It was actually called the Hyatt Spa back then. But it was really spa in terms of jacuzzis and pools, as opposed to what we know today as hotel spa.
Yeah.
So my job was really taking the kids around on, we did the Camp Hyatt, which was a kids program.
Yeah.
We looked after the pool and the gym and those kind of things. So that was kind of my first hotel experience.
So for all those people who are now like big law of attraction people, of you have to ask for what you want and then you have to do it, that didn't seem to be your way at all. It seemed like you fell into something, but you also had the openness to allow yourself to fall. There are a lot of people that would say, it's 4 weeks from now, I can't leave. I can't do that. But you had the freedom to do that. What gave you the freedom to take that leap?
Look, maybe, I don't know. I've never really thought about it. I think I've always been fairly open to those kind of things, but this was a fairly significant step.
Big step.
And at that age, I mean, I was 19 going on 20, I guess, although I think my ID in America probably said I was 22. But, I guess maybe it comes back to that earlier life of traveling around a lot and knowing that you can pick up and move everything on a dime, and, nothing really is that bad. There's a sense of adventure when you're that age, you're indestructible. America is an exciting place. And it's funny, I told somebody the other day, I guess I'd always had this dream of, not dream, that's an exaggeration, but I'd always had this image of, the tearful farewell, where you go to the airport and everybody's crying and the girlfriend is shattered, and you go overseas and you take on, like the
movies.
Like the movies. It
Right.
sounds more like sounds more like a chick flick than the kind of movies that I tended to watch. But and the funny part about that was I'd actually sort of done that fairly early on, right? I mean, that had basically been ticked off my list by 2021, and as had Disneyland. And I kind of refer to it a little bit as my Disneyland moment, because I went to Disneyland on this trip as a 19, 20-year-old. And as a kid, before I watched those National Geographic movies and those Jacques Cousteau movies, we had The Wonderful World of Disney at 6:30 on Channel 7 on a Sunday night.
Yeah.
And you start with, the magical Disney, what do you call it? The big tower and all these things.
Yeah.
And the teacups spinning around.
The castle and the teacups and all. Right.
There you go. All that stuff. And so I got there at 19, 20, and I'm like, nothing real special there. So it's interesting how I'd built up this great mystical thing about what it was. I'd gone there as a 20-year-old, and all of a sudden, your images, your predispositions, your thoughts, your dreams of what you think it's going to be, of course, is not. Now, it was exactly what it was, and it would have been different if I was a 7-year-old, but I was a 19-year-old, 20-year-old. It's a different world.
Yeah. So, but that's often true in everything that we do. Our expectation of something far exceeds oftentimes the reality of what it is, right? Because we paint it to be something that we're not. Do you see that in the business world also? Do you see that as that same example of people that a hotel opening, a spa opening, wherever you see it, do you see that exist where expectation exceeds reality and people get crushed?
Yeah, look, I mean, whether people get crushed or not, but certainly I think, we're in the illusion business in many ways, both the spa business and the hotel business. You're selling an escape, you're selling an illusion in many ways. And, the interesting thing, of course, is when you've worked in the hotel business and you are in those back hallways, and when you're in the locker room and you see the people come in and then you see them walk out the other end, and they're butler-esque kind of, uniforms, and the hair is perfect, and you're on stage. It really is. It's a completely different world, obviously, when you're back of house to front of house.
Yes.
And I think that's true not only in the spa business, but in the hotel business as well.
I think it's true in any business. I know.
You're probably right.
I know a lot of people that are very successful, and they say, well, my public persona, I have to be this, but my personal persona is completely different. Yep. And it always makes me a little sad, because it's a very disconnected reality for people sometimes, because sometimes you wish that they could just integrate those two and be real in front of people. But I've met a lot of those people that had one persona one way and who they were was somebody else.
Look, I'd say that's the majority of people. And I think there's, on different levels, it's either within your own family, you know, sometimes you have two different faces. Within your company, you have different faces. You know, and I think now with social media and these kind of outlets, people are starting to now be more aware of those different faces.
Yeah.
Someone was telling me the other day that a friend of theirs had just moved to Scotland, moved from Malaysia. A Thai person had moved from Malaysia to Scotland, started a new life, and said, "Oh, they seem so happy." I said, "Well, of course they do. They're on bloody Facebook. No one ever says how unhappy they are."
Yeah, exactly. So let's segue a little bit, because
Sure.
I know one of the things that you do a lot in the business that you're in is you innovate and you look for ways to innovate. Tell me what innovation means for you. First of all, am I right in saying that you innovate, that that's something that's key to you?
Look, I think on a personal level do. I think we as an industry generally don't. And, you know, I've written something, I do quite a bit of, you know, blog posts and podcasts and all these kind of things. And the reason I do that is because I found not enough people in this industry were really sort of calling out, not the untruths, but not calling out the full story on a lot of stuff. And I think we're an industry that when it comes to innovation, it's what I call attention-led innovation. And it's innovation just for the sake of getting some attention. And to me, it's like, because, you know, the spa business talks about innovation. They say we're very innovative. We've got these amazing new treatment beds. We've got these amazing new skincare products. But, you know, if you look at a skincare company, the major ones will come out with anywhere from 10 to 20 new products every year. And how much of those can be truly innovative?
Yeah.
How many of those ingredients can really be truly new discoveries? Every few years we get a big one and we realize this could, like Pro Collagen was a big thing. Collagen was a great thing. And so
CBD probably now, right?
Well, yeah, that's the rage right now that a lot of people are talking about on your side of the pond, not so much on my side, because, you know, we're still pretty conservative towards the legislation side of it, I think, still.
Gotcha.
But, you know, you look at, to me, it's like sports shoes, the spa industry and the skincare companies especially are like the sports shoe business and the toothpaste and the razor blade business. Every time you walk into a supermarket, you'll see a new razor blade. I mean, how many more strips, lubricating strips, how many more blades? Christ, a lubricating strip? You've got soap and water on your face already. Do you really need another lubricating strip? I don't think so. Yeah. You need a vibrating handle? I'm not sure. And the same is true of toothbrushes. There's always a new design for a toothbrush out there. And there's always new designs for running shoes, which, funnily enough, don't make me run any faster. So I think the world, because of that short attention span, because we're all competing for stuff, I think we're all looking to innovate, but I think we're innovating for attention as opposed to really making something significantly different and better. And to me, innovation doesn't have to be about making something better. To me, innovation is making something different.
Yeah. Huge point for you. I mean, I think that's a huge revelation, because when you look at the world, we're a world that lives on the outside a lot of the time, and we want to change the outside and say we've changed. Mm-hmm. But it's the inside changes that really create innovation. It's those things that oftentimes nobody can even see, but they feel it when they're around. They feel something's different, and those are innovation points. So one of the things I read that you wrote about was that the spa industry really started to take form and hold right around the same time the tech industry started to take form and hold. Mm-hmm. And I thought you made a very interesting comparison between those two industries. If we're not treading on thin ice, can you share some of the things you've said about that here for people to see?
Well, yeah, it's funny. I did a presentation at a conference in China a few years ago, I think it was. And on this slide, I had a picture of our company logo, Mandara Spa, which was founded in 1995. And then I had a picture of Windows 95.
Wow.
And, 95 was really the start, 95, 96, the mid-90s was really the start of the consumer internet. That's when, the ISPs started to come out and people started to get on the internet. And so my comparison was that we as an industry haven't necessarily innovated and changed much. If you were to look at a hotel spa, 25 years ago, our company, we just had our 23rd anniversary. So, and we were one of the pioneers. I mean, I wasn't there then, so I can't claim any great credit for it. But, I remember being in a hotel in Perth in 1994, maybe 95. And at that stage, doing the business plan for the hotel, our big USP was that we had a gym. Wow. Nobody was talking about a spa. People had just stopped talking about swimming pools, and our gym was rubbish. It was one of those little universal multi-stations, and it sat in the underground swimming pool, so it was, chlorinated and it was corroded pretty quickly. But that was our USP, because nobody else in the hotel business in Perth at that stage, or very few, had gyms. Nobody talked about spas. They didn't exist. And it's funny when you talk to hotel people that have been in their 30s, maybe 35, they don't know a world without spas, because spas in hotels have now become ubiquitous.
Yeah.
When you compare a hotel spa menu and a treatment menu from 95 to today, it's kind of the same stuff.
Wow.
It's massage, it's facial, it's manicure, it's pedicure. Some of the products have changed, obviously. There's innovation there, but as we touched on before, is that true innovation or just attention? And the same with some of the furniture. But I think the core offering hasn't changed at all. And so, I think that's where, as an industry, we've kind of just stayed in our lane. Whereas, much as I don't like to use this word, I worry that we're becoming irrelevant to the consumers. Then you take something like the internet, the consumer internet, we can't live without it. And so it always plays with my head, like, how the hell does that dynamic happen? How is this thing created, which everybody was skeptical about back then?
Yeah.
How has that become? I mean, we know how, but why does that thing become so important to us, I guess? And why does something like this spa business become kind of, we can do without it? It's a want, not a need. It's a nice to have. It's not a must have. We've kind of missed the boat.
You could sort of say that about the whole tech industry. I mean, having the latest iPhone is a want, not a need. I don't really need to have the latest iPhone. I could have, right? But yet we've bought into it. I wonder, because I've been in the spa industry a little bit too, I wonder if it doesn't have something to do with the people and the industry as a whole. Because one of the things that I realized when I was in the spa industry is some of the people that were bringing relaxation to people were sometimes some of the most stressed out people that I ever met. Mm-hmm. And I would walk into a spa and have a treatment, and I would say, hold it, let's sit for a minute and let me just hold your hands and relax you a little bit, because I don't want that energy in my body, because I'm an empath and I feel that stuff. But I wonder if the integrity of the message, because it's grown so quickly, or there's so many expectations, or they have to see so many people to make, and spas in general don't even make that much money. There's sort of something that gives a fifth star to a spa, right? To a hotel. Mm-hmm. And it's sort of it can be a lost leader to make the hotel. But I wonder if there isn't something about the people that are there and how we take care of in the wellness industry. If our innovation in wellness isn't around how we really treat each other and treat ourselves in our wellness.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think certainly the people have an interesting part to play in it, because one of the things I've thought about is, if you look at the tech industry, it's full of young people. If you look at the spa business, it's full of old people.
Yeah.
And, one of the questions I asked myself is, if we had younger people running these spa companies, if instead of me as a 50-year-old almost running this business, we had a 20-year-old, would we look significantly different? And would the services and the products that we offer look significantly different? I think the answer is yes. And then you can ask yourself, why is that? Well, we started as a high-end luxury kind of thing. As a result of that, the people with money wouldn't want to have a young person sitting there trying to tell them what they should do. So it's luxury. There's different elements of that, I guess. And it's interesting you say wellness, because back in 95, no one was talking wellness either.
Mm-mm.
In fact, when I eventually joined the spa business per se, when I left the hotel business and crossed to the dark side of the spa business in 2005, I guess it was, in those days, the biggest conversations was, are we spa or are we wellness? And I sat in conferences where people spent 3 hours yelling and screaming at each other over, we must be spa, we must be wellness.
Wow.
And, funny, even today, I think that's symptomatic to me of an industry that not only is growing, is fairly young. At that stage, we'd only been around 10 years. I think it's also symptomatic of an industry that maybe has gone on a boom, gone on a tear.
Totally.
And then had to stop and hit the reality wall, and kind of said, well, geez, what are we? What do we actually do? I'm not sure what we do. But by this stage, people have already built up their egos, their brands, their companies, their business, their money. And so it's pretty hard to step back and say, actually, I'm not sure there is much behind this. I just started doing massage and it worked, and now I'm a millionaire, and, I don't have the answers for the future. And that's where I think we were back in 2005 to a large extent. And, you could probably argue we might still be there now to some degree.
So I guess what I'm wondering is, we all look for innovation, and I love your definition of a vibrating handle on a toothbrush. Mm-hmm. It is not necessarily innovation. It might make, it might get in a little bit quicker, and it might clean up, but it's really cosmetic.
Yep.
And I wonder if there isn't something within the whole sense of relaxation and calm, the sense of having peace, that most people just don't know how to have. It doesn't matter if they're in the spa industry or in the business industry, or it's not a commodity that we trade on a lot. I know growing up, I had numerous opportunities to be a part of multi-million, maybe even billion-dollar companies. Mm-hmm. And to run them and be a part of them.
Yeah.
And I walked away to find inner peace. And my friends who are millionaires now, and some are billionaires, would always say to me, haven't you spent enough time finding yourself? Like, isn't it time to like get yourself into the business world and start doing something? Mm-hmm. And I know for myself, I'm so happy I had the courage to just maintain that space, because when I look around the world, I don't see a lot of people that have inner peace. And so in some ways, the quality of inner peace for a spa is so much bigger than the quality of being able to text my friend, which is connection, but sort of almost a superficial connection. Yet it's not superficial, because here we are. We've never even met each other, right? I mean, face to face, we spent time together. So this is super valuable. I don't mean to demean it, but so is inner peace. And we have the most tradable quality that anybody could ever want. Yet I think we're scared to go that place because we don't have it ourselves.
Yeah, look, I think there's obviously a much bigger focus now on mental health, mental wellness, mental well-being. And I think that goes at least partially to kind of what you're talking about in terms of inner peace. And I guess the system that we grow up in from day one doesn't reward inner peace as a behavior. I mean, I think if you go back to basic reward and belief systems, our belief system is to be rewarded, you have to achieve something, whether that is a salary, whether that's a stable job, whether that's a family. Some people don't want a family. Some people are much more innerly peaceful if they're on their own. And that's all right, as far as I'm concerned. You don't have to have people around you. It's different strokes for different folks, as they say. I think it comes back to the reward system doesn't, from day one, I mean, from when you're born, you're not rewarded by being peaceful and happy necessarily, I don't think.
So I wonder if the disruption, and you and I have had sort of this conversation before, and I'm happy to move away from it if it's not comfortable or if it's but I wonder if the disruption is really that real disruption happens when we take everything we believe and we set it down for a moment.
Mm-hmm.
And we allow ourselves then to pick up the pieces that still make sense. It's one of the things I love about the image of a mosaic, which is, the book that I wrote, is that in a jigsaw puzzle, every piece magnificently has to go in its place. And I thought that's so fabulous. I mean, what could be better than knowing every piece has its spot, right?
Mm-hmm.
But there's something so free about a mosaic, because if the pieces around it no longer resonate, you can literally lift the piece up. If it's stuck and it's glued in, or you can break it because it's made up of broken pieces anyway.
Right.
You can separate it out. And I wonder if the model of that mosaic, which is what I believe, isn't a model that would be good to integrate, because maybe it's time for us, for the real innovation and people like yourself, to help usher in. And I know we've talked about the fact that I would love to help do this, but I'm old. I'm an old man. The young kids have a whole different set of belief systems. Mm-hmm. And I really do wonder what would happen if the industry was innovated by young people, and I'm going to push you back a little bit, because the massage therapists for the most part are younger people. They're not older people. They're not 60-year-old men like me.
Sure.
Right. They're in their 20s and 30s, and they're telling people what to get and what creams to put on and what lotions and a lot. No,
they're following a script.
Okay. They're following a script that they've been given, but people that on the table don't know that. You know that, but people on the table for the most part don't know that.
Sure. But I guess what I would say to you is that when I say the industry is being led by older people, it's being led as opposed to actually doing the work. Yeah. So, I think the people that are touching the consumers are, yes, predominantly younger. I think the people who are telling those people what to do and directing them are the older people. Totally. And the ones who are deciding on the budgets and the ones who are deciding on the next innovation is invariably not the young people. And one of the things I've said to a couple of people recently at these SPA conferences, we go to all these conferences and events. And when I say SPA conferences, again, it's the same with just about every bloody event. I mean, they're all, whether you're going to a washing machine conference or a SPA conference, it's the same basic dynamics, which is we elevate the expertise and the experience. We never call on the entry-level people and say, what are you doing?
Yeah.
And I think, if you could have a SPA conference that was only presented, the only presenters at that conference were people who've been in the industry less than 12 months.
Yeah.
Now, I'd pay to go to that.
Wow. Yeah, I think I think a lot of people would, to be honest, because I think that, and I think it might be something to really consider. And for me, it's not about one taking over the other. It's about the connection of all of it together.
Yeah.
That would make a lot of sense. Like how do the ideas of the future generations help to carry on the ideas of the past generations? It's not exactly the same way. I mean,
and look, it's a little bit like what you said with the mosaic and dropping the pieces. I mean, what I like to say to people is that the SPA of tomorrow is going to look 20% like the SPA of today. The other 80% could be anything. And I mean anything. It could look like a Starbucks. It could look like a WeWork. It could look like a factory. It could look like a boutique, a shop. There's a million different ways it could go. And the SPA in your hotel could be 80% different to what mine is. And we're only just across the road because we got a different guest profile.
Yeah.
And, it's one of the things I guess I learned at the Olympics when I worked at the Olympics in Sydney back in 98 to 2000. What we did there is that we broke systems. Like the goal was to put a plan in place and break it. And you put it on the table and you don't stop until it's broken. And, invariably, I spent, 2 weeks putting together a procedure to get bags literally from this part of the village to that part of the village. And we stuck it on a table, and within, 20, 30 minutes, one of the guys from the food and beverage department, one of the junior guys, put a hole in it. And, I was an experienced hotel guy. I knew everything about moving bags.
Right.
But, it's this idea of questioning everything, the idea of asking why, my favorite word in the world, the idea of, if it doesn't stand to reason, it just doesn't stand. But it takes a certain amount of courage to be able to take on that approach if you don't know the answer on the other end. And it's like Gary Vaynerchuk, who's a guy that I would recommend everybody follow. I heard him say something the other day. He said, "Are you interested in being right or finding right?"
Love it.
And that takes, again, a massive amount of courage to be able to say, well, I don't actually have the answers. I don't know what the answer is, but I know this is not it. And so let's go that way and see what we can work out.
I would love to talk to you under separate cover around something that I'm doing. It's one of the guys that I just posted his podcast today. Mm-hmm. It's a man by the name of Louis Rosenberg, who is a doctor who got his training at Stanford. And right. he created something called unanimous AI. And what he did is he watched the way nature makes decisions. Mm-hmm. He watched the way a flock of birds fly. He watched the way a group of bees find their hive. They watch the way fish swim. They watch the way ants move through the world. They move in swarms.
Yeah.
They don't move in vertical realities where the older generations tell the younger generations what to do.
Yeah.
And they're finding now that through AI and human connectivity, like most of AI is about how do we replace the lesser thinking human mind. Yep. What they're doing is integrating the human consciousness and the human experience with the intelligence of the artificial intelligence. And they're finding ways to help to get people who don't swarm naturally to swarm and to make decisions where people are in opposition. And it's really what I want to do with the Mosaic. I've talked to him about partnering up, and I'd really like to bring it to companies and to people. But my goal is to create this Mosaic swarm,
right,
where we come together and we solve problems in humanity. Mm-hmm. But when I hear you speak, it has incredible innovation possibilities, because you said something early on that I wanted to just circle around to, mm-hmm. which is I never knew what my passion was. And when I looked at other people, I thought they had a lot more passion than me.
Yep.
When I look at you, I see an incredibly passionate man. I see a man that stands up against the odds. I see a man who has a belief system, and he doesn't go status quo. Mm-hmm. And so what I want you to know is, even though you don't see that, when I do what you do to other people, I see a man who has tremendous amount of passion. And so part of the place that we're at right now is there is something good to being wise and getting older. We have years behind us. We have knowledge. We have experience. And that experience doesn't just die to the next young 18-year-old who's working in a garage disrupting us. Mm-hmm. But when we can put that together and swarm that together and say, how does the experience of our ages meet up with the innovation of a new way of doing things? That's when things start to get exciting.
Yeah.
And I guess my question is, and it's a long question, I'm sorry. No. My question is, it isn't so much, is it that the spa industry hasn't innovated or is it that it hasn't focused its attention on the right places to innovate?
Yes. One of the things that I actually got booed off stage for in Dubai a few years ago was a conversation that started with wellness is a movement, not an industry. And people took that as being a real negative statement. People said, well, that's rubbish. We're a real industry. We're a real business. Because I think the spa industry has been struggling for its identity for people to take it seriously. And even at a micro level in an individual hotel, the spa girls are not taken seriously by the F&B girls or by the front office girls, because, they just sort of sit around and don't do much every day. We're working every day. And I know that because I've obviously been on the other side of the deal. But, to me, and it ended up being a bit of a roundtable conversation later, where I said, if you analyze the dynamics of a movement versus the dynamics of an industry, things like the barriers to entry, things like existing systems and processes and standard procedures. We don't really have a lot of those things that a real industry would have. And it's fascinating to me, when I go to these conferences and events, I always seek out the non-spa people, to your point about the status quo. And it staggers me how I'm sitting with some guy from the automotive industry, and he says, I'm coming to learn about wellness and spa and health. And I'm fascinated. You guys got no idea, do you?
Wow.
Because he's come in expecting an industry that is defined and clear and succinct. And it's kind of not, you know? And so the idea of a movement, I think, is great.
Why do you think that is? Because clearly there's a lot of intelligent people that are in that industry. Clearly there's a lot of people that have donated and dedicated a lot of their time to that industry. Why do you think it's an industry that's still in definition?
It's a pretty good question, and I do ask myself this question a bit. I think it's basically related to the first 10 years just went like this, and it was something that started out as, look, if I take you to the foundation story of Mandara Spa, there were two guys. One guy was a venture capital guy who had an exit, went to Bali to sort of chill out. His wife was interested in massage. She went to find some massage people, helped to train them on her techniques. And at this stage, he'd come from, I think Napa Valley area. And I think at that stage, early 90s, he said there was only maybe one or two kind of destination type spas in those days. There was no spas anywhere, even in the US. And they decided that they were going to buy a block of land in Bali, that she was going to hire these girls and train them on how to do massage. They were going to create a big spa village. That was the plan, early 90s in Bali. Innovation,
huge.
Innovation, but innovation driven not so much by him, but by his wife, who had a passion for this kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so that was the plan. 94, 95, 96, Asian financial crisis comes, which was really a world crisis with Asian influence, I guess. And the industry hit the toilet, tourism hit the toilet, everything went downhill. He had a mate who was a part owner in a hotel, and his hotel was now running at 10, 20% occupancy versus the 70s it was before. They were literally sitting around one day, said, well, my business is horrible. My business is horrible. How about we take out the furniture in the hotel room? We put a couple of massage tables in. We've got these girls over here that we've got trained already. We'll see if we can make some money. Now, and that was the start of Mandara Spa as a company.
Wow.
It wasn't based on any driving consumer need. It was only based on a need to try and, I guess, fill a gap and a need to try and make some money. And I don't know that we were necessarily the first company doing it. We were certainly one of the first. But, you know, I think part of it is that's where it evolved. People cottoned onto this idea. It was the right time. And there's a whole bunch of reasons why, you know, I think we've sort of gone from destination spas. We had that thing, you know, the fat farms.
Yeah.
We had the fitness craze. And then we sort of had, you had to go away to get these things. Hotel resorts were a place that you could go away to get these wellness things and fitness things. Then it all became localized, so you could just go down the road to get it. There's a million reasons why it's become not so unique. Why it hasn't innovated is the interesting question. And I think, look, I don't know. I mean, I think part of it is that the people who got into it maybe fell into it as opposed to had any real dynamic drive. And that's not meaning to be disrespectful to those early innovators in the industry, because there was some significant people who made some real inroads. But I think what happens, as with every craze, everybody jumps on board. Yeah. And, you know, sometimes the noisy people are the ones that get elevated as opposed to the ones with the real substance.
Yeah, when I was involved in the spa, you know, going to iSpa and those things, it was the time where it was a doggy spa and a doctor spa, and you know, everything. Right. The spa became such a big name that everybody. There was a car spa, you know, where we'll take it, right? And so it sort of got oversold, and yet there's something happening. Even if you look at shifts in classical religious icons. In the religions from the East, they talk about 4 different time periods, and they're long time periods, 2200
Right.
years, right? But we're moving out of the age of form called Kali Yuga, and we're moving into something called Dwapara Yuga. We've already made that shift. We're in the early stages, a few hundred years of a 2400-year cycle.
Right.
Energy, Dwapara Yuga is the Yuga of energy. And science and quantum physics is already telling us we're not solid. We're not made up of solid form. We're made up of energy. What better field could there be to blow that realization into the world than the world of spa and wellness? I mean, it seems like it's such an obvious place to actually bring the innovation of the time-driven reality into the reality of people's lives, because people are waking up to this, but they're not waking up quickly. And it seems like you said so many things that I love. One's that. The other is the reward system has been financial, but the financial reward system hasn't rewarded the people that thought they were going to be rewarded by it. I mean, it has a few people, but even I've mixed and some of my close friends are billionaires. They have all the money in the world. They have more money than God, but most of them have zero inner peace.
Mm-hmm.
Most of them think the whole world wants to be with them just for their money. Most of them have no sense of self. And I wonder if the reward, we've just been sold a bunch of lies. And I wonder if the spa industry couldn't really innovate itself by literally disrupting the lie and infusing a new truth in, a new reward.
Yeah, and look, I think we're on the verge of potentially being able to do that now with this newfangled thing called wellness. Because I think spa up until then in most hotels was a pampering experience. It wasn't really that inner peace. It was a beauty thing, kind of.
It was what rich people did to feel taken care of.
Kind of, right? And I think the reality of going, there's issues of scaling these things as well, right? I mean, how many we have between our ships and our land-based spas, we've got close to 200 outlets all over the world at any given time. That's a lot of people who are trying to deliver an experience. And is every one of them the most amazing, earth-shattering, life-changing experience you've ever had? Probably not. Some people are in it for the money. Some people are in it because they want to change lives. Some people are in it for whatever the reasons. So, I think the idea that spas could be the place where people go to inner peace is something I touched on a little ebook that I wrote a while back called The Organizational Face of Wellness. And it's a concept that was introduced to me by Professor Jerry Bodecker, who's actually the chair of the Global Wellness Initiative on Mental Wellness. And it was a throwaway comment over a dinner one night where he said, I think spas could potentially be the organizational face of wellness. And it kind of stuck in my head. And I approached him a couple of weeks later. I said, what the hell were you talking about? I didn't get it, but it was in my head. I couldn't get rid of it.
Yeah.
He said, like you go into a sports clinic or to a hospital, you go to see the GP or the generalist, they point you to the specialist. The wonderful world of wellness is so bizarre and foreign to so many people out there, but there's so much we could offer them. And the spa could be the safe entry point to that. Most people aren't going to want to go down to a little dodgy shop in Chinatown to see the real mystical man who's actually going to solve your problems because they don't feel comfortable with it.
Safe, yeah.
The spa is a safe place. So the spa could be the safe entry point into those wonderful worlds of wellness. And I think that's an interesting perspective that hotels could start to do. And that's part of that 80% that I'm talking about. 20% is the massage, the manicure, the pedicure. That stuff can stay. That's fine. But, maybe we are there to educate people on these other alternatives. Not necessarily deliver them, but at least educate. But I think the hotel the right place for that.
I think you could also, this is me now, and this is us just having a conversation, which I love because people can be a fly on the wall to hear this conversation. Within 25 to 30 to 50 years maximum, massage is going to become obsolete. because we are going to have in our cars chairs that massage us on our way to work. We're going to have, just like we have sensors in the cars that are self-driving, we're going to have those sensors. We're going to be able to have machines that massage us and take out our tension, our clothing. Everything about that is going to change. And so if we stay in that place, technology and innovation is going to make us bankrupt. This is the time to start to say, we see the industry's changing. We see what we're doing will become obsolete, like most of other businesses that are happening. Mm-hmm. We will become obsolete. So where is the innovation? What can we do through energy? What can we do through healing? What can we do through distance? What can we do through this reality that we are not form or energy, that there is no time and space, that what would happen if Mandara Spa, for instance, took on a group of 1,000 energy healers, and those energy healers sent energy out to people, to every room, that they align the rooms in every hotel, they align the energy of people walking through, so that when people actually came in, they could feel a tangible difference there. I don't know if you've ever had that experience, but I've had experiences where I've walked into place and I felt like I was walking through a real initiation almost.
Right.
I mean, I think the spas of the future are going to be energy healing spas, energy alignment spas. And I know, because my wife has just started developing that talent. Mm-hmm. And there is no space and time. She goes in and she feels somebody and she sees what's out of balance. She aligns that. Those are miracle things that are happening now. And people, it's like driving on a road where there's traffic and driving on a road where there is no traffic. You get to where you're going faster and more relaxed. It's just that simple.
Yeah, it is, but it's also that intangible, and that's where the problem lies, especially when we're talking about spas in hotels. You know, this idea that spas in hotels are kind of baked into the system already. As you touched on earlier, you need to get one if you want a 5-star rating. Yep. The travel agents expect to have you. The guests actually expect to have you, even though they're not necessarily going to use it. And so I think the word spa, the idea of spa as we know it today, is baked into the system. It's not necessarily locked down in terms of what it has to be, but it's certainly baked in. So it's baked in, it's not locked down. I think there are companies out there offering these kind of things that you talk about, the healing, the energy type of stuff. The reality is that I think for average Joe or Jane consumer, that's just more of this mystical spa goo-boo that I don't really get.
Right.
And you know, I think the industry has been guilty of that in the past. It's a little bit like behind the curtain. You don't know what's going on over here because we're the experts. We'll tell you what you need.
Yeah.
But if you read a spa treatment menu, it's the most mystical, beautiful, exotic sounding thing that you can imagine. Then you go into a room and it's like, well, that was very similar to the massage I had yesterday.
Yeah.
So I don't dispute that that's potentially where it goes. I don't dispute that things like clothing and you know, robots and whatever else is coming.
Car seats. I mean, we're going to drive in our cars. They're self-driving. We don't need to do anything. We're going to sit in the chairs. They're going to completely relax us. They're going to sense where tension's in the body. They're going to be able to heat it up or cool it down. They're going to be able to apply exactly the right amount of pressure as we look at our screen, which is our windshield, and we interact in a world through voice interaction and internet things to get our business done, while at the same time we're relaxing and working at the same time while we're no longer having to drive ourselves anywhere.
Right. And so it comes back to, what are we selling? Are we selling massage? Are we selling pampering? Are we selling relaxation? Are we selling beauty? Are we selling wellness? Are we selling inner peace? And I think those businesses that are selling massage, I'm with you. You know, and I've actually said this to people in the past, and they say, well, massage is never going away because human touch is still going to be needed, maybe more so in the future than ever.
Yeah.
And that's a great point. But to me, human touch is not necessarily massage. Is the massage just human touch, or is it the physical manipulation of the muscles and the tissues to loosen them up?
What I'd like to lob into the air is what you're actually selling is connection. You're
Right.
selling that connection through human
Yeah,
touch.
sure.
You're selling that connection through aligning the body to connect in the way that it's supposed to connect. There's the segue that we just went into, for me, was about an industry that may be short on its desire or know-how of where to innovate. Because to me, wellness is just another word that really doesn't have innovation to it. Maybe it does. And mental wellness, when I hear it, I sort of think of mental illness.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not what you're talking about. Spa's been talking about body, mind, spirit.
Yep.
They've really been body. They
Yep.
haven't been much mind.
Mm-hmm.
And they've been a little tiny bit of spirit, but not much. Inherent in the description of what you are already is what you are already. It's a
Right.
place for you to have body, mind, spirit integration, in my mind, and that's the huge innovation that could happen. And anybody that's walking in right now to a place that talks about body, mind, spirit, they may not be a construction worker in Alabama, but they might be. Mm-hmm. Because a lot of the words are becoming more and more commonplace. And so what I want to do, I would love to have this conversation. I might be a far woo-woo sort of guy, but I don't feel that that's what I am. I feel like there's a real need in the industry to find itself and to define itself. And it's searching for where it's not defined what it is. And it seems a little silly because right in front of it is what it is.
Say that again.
It feels to me that the industry is searching. It's like the guy who lost his keys outside by the door, but the street light's on by his car. So he searches for the keys by the car because the street light's there. And at least he can see, but he knows he didn't drop them there. So he'll never find his keys there.
Yep.
It seems like the industry is searching in a place that it's really not in. Wellness. What is wellness? What is wellness? It's a big word that doesn't mean anything really. It's just a catch-all phrase that makes us feel good that we're innovating. But really what's right in front of us has been what's always been in front of us: a body, mind, spirit experience.
But okay, let's go back a step. Wellness is just a big, broad concept. So too is connection, isn't it?
Well, it's a concept if you only talk about it as a concept. If you
Same with wellness.
Well, but let me paint for you the picture of connection.
Okay. When
you come into a place and you feel a connection the moment you walk in because it feels good. When you go for a treatment, whatever that treatment is, if it's an energy healing, a massage, a swim, or whatever, there are people there who guide you through that process. They hold you, they touch you, they guide you through in a way that's appropriate for you to be held and touched and guided. Because now we live in a world where that's we got to be careful, right? Yeah. But there's also the connection of human beings. There's a connection to an energy source that we want to teach you about, that actually is what's running the wellness of your body. And so if you start to explain the experience of the connection that's happening when you come into this place, which is something you don't have when you're sitting by yourself in a room to a computer. I mean, we have connection right here. There's a part of that connection we're experiencing right now, right? Where we're having good conversation. I can feel your presence. I feel you're with me. But there's a connection that I can't reach out and just hold you. I can't go with you for a coffee and get behind the screen. There's something that happens in that coming together. What I would love to see is how we look at in spa what spa is. When I first was at Hay House, I'd been used to selling books in metaphysical bookstores, woo-woo bookstores.
Yeah.
When I came into spas, I said, hold it, these are the new metaphysical bookstores of the world. Because people are coming here for healing. And what we offer is healing. And so we can bring healing into these places. And these are all sorts of people that would never walk into a metaphysical bookstore. The spa environment, through the trust that it's gained in people, can also now extend that past the metaphysical bookstore experience to an actual experience, which is they're doing.
And that can work to a degree, but I'm not sure that hotel spas is the way that's going to happen, because, when I look back at even resort spas, it's not just corporate hotels. The reason for people being there is not necessarily for what you're talking about. It's not necessarily for what we're selling. And so the challenge you have is that if you have that facility in the hotel, is that the right use of the space? Is it the right use of that facility, that building, those people, to offer that healing, that connection to the 7 people that actually want it today?
Right.
And that involves a commercial decision about whether that's right for that property. Right. And that's why I say, I think, because I'm not sure, back to what the consumers want, I'm not sure most hotel guests, they might need it, right, but I'm not sure most hotel guests think they want it. I was talking to someone just yesterday, and they were talking about how they didn't have time to do something while they were in the hotel last week. And I said, you had time, you just chose not to. You can't tell me you didn't have an hour. You're staying in a hotel for a business trip. I know this is my life. You have time. You just choose not to. Yeah. And you choose not to because you're uncertain about whether you're going to get the quality in return for the amount of time that you invest. It's not just a 1-hour treatment in the spa. It's the 1 hour you can't schedule a meeting before, the 1 hour you can't schedule a meeting after, and it's the cost. So now you're actually asking me for 3 hours of my time. You've actually got to give me $300 worth of value for my $100 massage now. Yeah. And so these are the kind of conversations that in a hotel spa environment, I think are challenging, because I think what you're talking about is great in certain markets, in certain properties, in certain locations. Yeah. But I think we've got to either do 2 things. We've got to put it in the right locations, or we've got to somehow try and find a more acceptable commercial package, if you like, to put that in. You've got to be able to sell a Chutsky to me that's got that in it, that I can attack a small version of it. And it's, it's like meditation. And that's why I love these meditation apps that are out there, because it gives people a nice, simple way to just try it. Now, they might be rubbish compared to, true, authentic meditation. I don't know. I'm not an expert. Yeah. But it doesn't matter, because it gives the consumers, in a package that they're used to consuming, in a form factor that they're willing to try, it gives them a chance to dabble. And then if they like it, they'll go further. If they don't, well, you need to try and tweak that packaging, if you like.
Totally. I'm going to lob one more thing, and that would be that this idea of you don't actually need to take time. It's not actually a place they have to go to. It's actually infusing the environment, the rooms, the beds, the hotel, the spa, infusing it with a certain amount of energy that we don't know. The thing is, it has to be tried to see if it works. It has to be tried because it's sensitive. But I know when I walk into a room and it feels good, I feel good. Mm-hmm. And I know when I walk into a room that feels bad, I feel bad. And I wonder...
Sorry, go on.
Go ahead. No, you go.
Is everybody that way? Is everybody that in tune? Is everybody that sensitive to the things you're talking about?
I think no is the obvious answer, but I think it's only no because they haven't had a chance to experience it. I think that if you had 100 people walk into a room that didn't feel good, 100 people would feel not good. Because, and we could paint it out where it's scary or it's violent or it's threatening or it's, just to make the point, when you walk into a scary environment, you're scared. Mm-hmm. When you walk into a calm, peaceful environment, you relax a little bit. When you meet somebody who's in a bad mood, you feel the energy of that bad mood. When you meet somebody that's in a great mood, you feel the energy of that. So there are numerous examples where I would say 95 out of 100 people would feel that. They know when they're meeting an aggressive person that they're meeting an aggressive person. They know when they're meeting a kind person, they're meeting a kind person, right? So it would not be an overnight, like you're going to walk in and you're going to feel it, but it would be something where I believe the new energy, the new model, the new innovation is not something that we see now. It's what we don't see.
Mm-hmm.
It's not something tangible that we say, this is it. But we say, gosh, we walk into these places and we just all, no matter where we are in the country, in the world, we walk into these places, it just feels good.
Yeah, look, I don't dispute what you're saying. I just look at it from the conversations I have with hotel owners and hotel general managers and hotel corporate officers. You know, it's hard enough to get them on board. Going back to this wellness conversation, the idea that, you know, wellness, being well. I was asked years ago in, I think, Spa Business Magazine for my definition of wellness. They interviewed a whole bunch of industry leaders about their definition of wellness. And of course, everybody's talking about meditation and enlightenment and healing and comfort and all these things. I spoke about sitting on the beach with a glass of red wine, watching the sun go down.
Right.
So I was the devil's spawn in that particular article. But to me, that's what makes me feel well. And wellness already is a fairly intangible kind of fluffy concept, to your earlier point. But it is something that we can say, well, you know, if I want to be well, I've got to make sure the lighting is correct. I've got to make sure that there's no chemicals coming out of the woods and the fabrics and the paints. I've got to make sure that, you know, the air circulation is actually, you know, nice, pure, filtered air. It's not the rubbish that normally comes into a hotel. And there are hotel companies that are obviously doing that on a very small scale.
Yeah.
And there is some evidence right now that that gives them a better room rate. But it's certainly not to the point where, and maybe it's a cost structure, that's, I think, part of the conversation. It's not to the point where, you know, your average 4-star hotel is all of a sudden going to spend on well bedding, well lighting, well paint, well fabrics, well furniture, well air systems, HVAC systems. So the commercial reality is missing. Yeah. And I think if it's still missing at a wellness level, which is fluffier but still a bit tangible, I can actually equate being well to these 5 or 6 things in the room. To try and say to somebody, you need to now spend on connection or energy, and I'm going to give you that.
You would say you want to connect on feeling good. And how do you feel good? You know it when you walk into a room. I mean, this is a conversation I would love to have with you, because I think we can go on and on. And I completely get your point, and I don't mean to push my point. But what I know about what I know mm-hmm. is that innovation comes from the things that we don't yet see, not the things that we see. And what we tend to do is argue from the places that we see why the things we don't see work, until the things we don't see become the things we see, which is no longer innovation. It's just the only reason someone has a pocket phone, a mobile phone, is because, you know, the dial-ups in their house don't even exist anymore, right? So, I mean,
that's why Henry Ford didn't build a faster horse, right?
Right, exactly. So the question is, how in an industry that's slow to innovate, how do you actually get innovate? And that. So I want to honor your time, because I know we have about another 10 minutes maximum when it's already long. What's one thing that you've seen in your industry that you thought was right, but over time you realized wasn't as right as you thought it was?
Whew, that's a great question. Something that I thought was right.
I mean, not you, because you don't make mistakes. No, I'm teasing you. But, you know, but something you thought was right, but then over time you realize, gosh, I didn't see that correctly.
I thought I made a mistake back in 1983, but I was mistaken. Something that I thought was right, but wasn't. It's a challenge, you know, and I say it's a challenge for me because I think I'm a natural cynic. I think everything that I see, I question and say, nah. It's a really tough question, and you've got me thinking. You know, things that I thought were right, I'd say it's kind of where we are now, this move away from pampering into something more. And I think it's probably the other way. It's something that I thought was maybe not quite right, but it seems to be coming a lot quicker. I think this whole idea of mental wellness in and around the spa and wellness business and industry, that's moving a hell of a lot quicker than what I thought. I mean, I was even listening to an Australian TV show last night, and they're talking about how much budget there's kids in school. There's 5-year-old kids, 6-year-old kids in school having a mental timeout. They're all lying down and listening to self-guided meditation after their run around in the playground at lunchtime.
Yeah.
Now, geez, that would have never happened in my day, obviously.
Right.
So to probably not answer your question, but to flip it, something that, because I'm still trying to work that one out, something that I thought was not quite right, at least not for now, that I think is accelerating and quicker than I think we realize, is this awareness around mental health. And I think,
got it.
To your point, mental health, mental wellness, like you, I say mental health, mental wellness, it's still mental illness to me. And that was a conversation I actually had with,
I think it's
a conversation I had with Jerry Bodecker about the guy, because what do you call this thing? Because as soon as you say anything mental, I'm assuming it's an illness, because that's what we're programmed for. But I think that's changing too. Actually, I really do think that's changing. I don't know what else you would call it either.
Yeah.
There is a science to it as well. So it has to be that.
It would be, in my mind, the switch would be from mental to mind wellness. When I think mind wellness, or I hear mind wellness, I don't think mental illness. I think mind. I think, how do my thoughts direct my reality? What I think to affect how I live? Okay, but let me jump with you to another place. Okay.
Do.
Out of all the things that you've seen, out of all your things you've been cynical on, all the things you've come to see, all the things you've brought to exist, if there was one thing that you would boil all of it down to make a business or a person or a life successful, what would that one thing be?
Just asking why. I think that also can lead you to a point of extreme frustration. And I think that can also lead people to, look, I spend a lot of time looking out the window late at night, just thinking, trying to find out what the why is. And it's, to my point about my passion earlier on, I continually ask it and I question, well, am I really passionate enough about it? And I think with everything that I do in business and in life, I kind of ask myself why. And I think even in relationships, I think even on a personal level, I didn't get married until later in life. And I think that was probably part of me asking why, why do I want to be with this person for the rest of my life? Until such time as you don't have to ask that question, when it just hits you and you say, well, this is obvious.
Yeah.
When I met my wife now, it's like, it was one of those from the movies again. I feel like I've watched way too many movies. It was across a crowded dance floor kind of stuff, and our eyes met. It was that kind of thing. And if you saw me dancing, you would understand why that it had to be in the eyes and not in the feet. But, I ask why until I can't ask why anymore. And I think that's the key, certainly, to success in business. I think you've got to question every little thing. And it doesn't mean you change everything. I think you've got to question it, though.
Yeah. Fabulous. And so, how I close the podcast, and I want to, after this, I definitely want to get information from you of how people can contact you, and we'll put it in show notes and all that stuff too.
Sure.
I always ask people, is the world we're living in, with all the incredible changes that we had? I mean, years ago we were tar and feathering people, so I know we're living a better life now than that, perhaps.
Unless you're in the tar business.
Unless you're in the tar or feather business, right?
Right.
But when you look at the world that exists today, is this the world you always dreamed you would hand over to future generations?
Honestly, I know that's a question people like to throw around, conversations people like to have about the future generations, and call me a selfish son of a bitch, but it's not something I think a lot about, to be perfectly honest. When I was a kid, did I think, what's the future going to be? No more than any other kid. Even now, do I think, what's the future going to be? I don't know that I even significantly think about the future now. I really don't.
So let me put it more personal, because you don't have kids, right? Or do you have kids? Do you have children?
We do, yeah. We got two.
Okay.
Well, they're adults, but yeah.
Okay. Do you have nieces and nephews? Do they have do they have children? Like,
we don't have young kids yet, but I get your point. Like, what do you want them?
What world would you want? Is this the world you would want them to grow up in? I'm not talking about you have to predict the future or make it beautiful, it's just pretty simple. Like, is this a place where you feel comfortable saying, this is what I dreamed of handing over to you?
Look, I think it's a world of opportunities still. I still think the opportunities are endless. I still think that an increasing amount of people have an opportunity to make something for themselves and for the world. As many as there should? No. Are there still people growing up in abject poverty and discrimination and all those things? Absolutely there is. And I've been privileged enough to not have to deal with most of that stuff. Yeah. But I think we're in a better place today than we were, to your point, back in the tar and feather days.
100%.
I certainly think we've moved ahead in a lot of that stuff. You know, do we have environmental concerns? Yeah, but we're smart enough to fix those problems and go to another planet or build an artificial space. I'm not worried about that. You know, are we more connected now than ever before? I think so. Are we connected on a human level with touch? Not as much, but you know, you used to have to wait a week to get a fax returned or a letter returned. Yeah. So, you know, I think we're certainly more connected potentially if we want to be. I think that's a good thing. I think we're more aware of stuff. I think we're more able to learn new things if we want to. The challenge about what we're learning and who's actually teaching it, but that's always been the case. You know, there's always been the big media companies who told us what to learn, and the big schools that told us what to learn, and the big endowments. So, yeah, look, I think overall we're in a better place than we were before. Do we still have some work to do? I think we always will.
And so from that place, even just that place, what would be one thing that you would recommend that we do to do that work that we still have left to do? Is there something, I mean, maybe you've already answered it, but is there something that you would suggest to people to make it a better place? Not just from opportunity, but from human connectivity, from disagreements, from fighting, from silos, from all that stuff. Is there something that you would recommend to people, or one guidance from all the people that you've met and seen, that would help the world become a better place?
You know, the thing that always strikes me is when you see those little posts on Facebook or whatever, and people are, you know, it's a photo of a black kid and a white kid, and they're saying, you know, kids don't discriminate. They don't know racial discrimination. And I think if anyone was able to bottle that, to bottle the fact that when you are young, when you're a kid, when you're first new to the world, you don't have the biases. You don't have whatever viewpoints, or maybe you do have some spiritually with your connections and your family. I don't know. I'm not into that. But, you know, if you could bottle that picture on Facebook of the kids that are, you know, completely different backgrounds and they're just playing together and enjoying each other's company.
Yeah.
That would be the magic. I don't know what you do, but there's got to be a way. I mean, there's got to be a way to somehow reverse engineer the kid. You know what I mean? You've got to be able to, whether it's the mind machines in the movies again, I watch way too many movies, that go back and, you know, reverse your memories and all those things. I don't know. We can brainwash people to walk in and assassinate somebody and not think about it. We must be able to brainwash people to go the other way, I would have thought.
So I love when a conversation comes full circle. And this is my close, and you can comment on it if you like. But one of the big innovations that I see in the world that exists in front of us today is, how do we use our mental ability? How do we use this mental wellness that you're talking about, that you've been talking, and how do we use the power of the mind to actually decide what are the beliefs that we're going to teach our kids? What are the beliefs that we're going to show to our kids? What are the beliefs that we're going to actually practice so that they can model, so that we live in a world that actually has that possibility, where when we look at another person, we don't see the color of their skin or the religion they practice or the border they're behind or how much money they have or who their daddy is or who their mommy is or what size house they live in or any of that stuff. but we just see something else that's just the joy of playing with another friend on the street. And how do we do that? And wouldn't it be delightful if for this conversation, for you and me, that the spa environment could be, whether it's in a hotel, independent facility, resort, destination, wherever. Wouldn't it be amazing if that could be the place where we would help people not brainwash their minds, but allow them to choose their mental framework of how they want to walk out with a mindset that would change the world, one person, two persons, three persons at a time. And down the line, I'd love to talk to you about what I'm doing with this mosaic swarm, because I think it would be fascinating. But those are possibilities.
Mm-hmm.
When we look at the world that exists on the superficial side, we see only differences. But when we go underneath, we all want the same thing. We want to be loved and accepted. We want to be listened to and heard. We want to be validated and acknowledged. In my travels and in the world that I've never met somebody who said, all I want is for you to agree with me. They could care less. They don't care if I agree. They know I have the right to think what I think. But when we just validate, when we listen to somebody and say, I get that, I hear you. Thank you so much for sharing that with me. I understand now how you think. I don't necessarily agree with it, but you have every right to think the way you think, and I want to acknowledge that to you. I think the world could turn into a different place. And I think one of the reasons this conversation excited me is I think spas could become a place where that people could be given permission to just be okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that would be a very sellable quality, where if people were loved and accepted, listened to and acknowledged, heard, loved, that it would make a difference, whether it's from near or from far. I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for taking your time. You're not a man who sits around with nothing to do. So I appreciate you giving me this hour and a half to just have a really nice connection. And I thank you from the bottom of my heart for sharing yourself with us.
Look, Danny, I really appreciate the time. As always, it's always good to chat, and wish you nothing but success for the podcast and the Mosaic Swarm and the book, which I've read and I loved. As I said, it was, I think what I said to you is that you had me at the mortician, because
Yes.
that very first chapter was one that even now I still get a bit of a chill when I think about the reaction that I had from it. So if anyone out there has not actually read the book, they've got to get their hands on it. And I'm sure you'll have lots of links to do that, because, you know, I'm not normally a woo-woo guy. I don't normally go to the woo-woo bookshop, and I expected this to be a woo-woo experience. And quite honestly, it wasn't. It hit me as a real simple, clear message that actually made a hell of a lot of sense. So congrats on that, and congrats on the show.
Thank you so much. And if someone wants to find you, which I'm sure they will, how would they go about doing that?
I'm all over LinkedIn. That's sort of my platform of choice. Trent Monday is the profile pretty much everywhere. I also have a website where I publish pretty much all of my content, which is not necessarily company endorsed content, but my own views. That is trentmonday.com. If you head on over there, you'll find pretty much all of the blogs, all of the podcasts, the vlogs, the video blogs that I do every day go up on LinkedIn. And that's probably the best place to find me.
And your podcast is also on there, right? Where you give
Trent 365. We've been doing a bit of swapping around. I had a couple of shows. I merged them into one. Trent 365 is basically what is now a daily show. And also conversations like this that I have progressively also go on to Trent 365. Going to have a problem in a leap year, but right now it's Trent 365.
So if you want to know more about Trent, Trent, Monday, MUNDAY.com. And all things Trent Monday will come to you easily. So again, thank you. We'll post that below in the show notes. An honor to sit with you again. Thank you, my friend.
Awesome. Thanks, Danny. Have a great day.
Take care. Bye-bye now.
Bye now.